on a frozen Montana highway, through a blizzard that carved white scars across the darkness. Former Navy SEAL Ethan Hale saw something that made him slam the brakes. A woman clutching a baby to her chest. For children stumbling behind her, wrapped in thin layers that did nothing against the storm. All of them trembling, their footprints already fading into the snow. Ethan was 35, built from quiet storms, with hands scarred from years of breaching doors and dragging wounded teammates to safety. His canine partner Ranger, a 4-year-old German shepherd, growled sharply in the passenger seat. Not the wind, but at something alive. The woman staggered into view, wrapped in a faded wool shawl woven with Lakota patterns. Her long black hair was plastered to her cheeks by melting frost, her copper skin blanched with cold. She clutched the baby as though the storm might rip the child away. Behind her, four small children shook in clothes far too thin for a night like this. Ethan threw the truck in park and stepped into the slicing wind. The woman froze, standing with protective fierceness despite exhaustion. Her dark eyes held both terror and defiance. "Stay back," she whispered, tightening her grip on the baby. Ethan raised both hands slowly, palms open. He noticed everything. The trembling of her arms from cold and fatigue. The bluish tint on the children's lips. The way the oldest child pressed herself between her mother and him like a small shield. His voice came out low and steady, the tone he once used with civilians in shock zones. "Come with me. No one survives alone." For a moment, nothing existed except the wind screaming across the highway. The woman looked at her children, at their shaking knees and reddened fingers, and something in her resolve cracked just enough to let hope seep through. She nodded once, barely visible. Ethan moved gently, lifting the children one by one into the warm cab. Ranger positioned himself between the kids and the door like a guardian. The baby whimpered when the heat touched his face, then settled. The woman climbed in last, hesitating only to look back down the deserted road, as if expecting the storm itself to chase her. The cabin settled into fragile warmth. The children huddled under thick blankets, their cheeks no longer the alarming shade of blue. When the woman finally spoke her name, Sarah Wyaka, her voice held the soft resonance of someone careful with speech, as though every word had to be weighed. Her story unspooled slowly. Her father had vanished on these Montana mountains 15 years earlier. With his absence, her world weakened. Her mother married her into another Lakota family, to a man named Talon. He had once been proud and steady, but whiskey turned that pride into obsession. He demanded a son. Each daughter's birth drove him deeper into bitterness, and his hands became instruments of rage. When the children finally drifted into sleep, Ethan spoke quietly about his own ghosts. His parents' ranch had burned down 2 winters ago while he was deployed. He didn't make it back in time. He recounted his last deployment, Operation Silent Dusk. 3 hostages saved, 5 of his men lost. The faces still visited him at night. Sarah watched him closely, studying him the way someone accustomed to danger studies a fire. She didn't interrupt. She simply listened. "You carry ghosts," she whispered. "So do you," Ethan replied. The truth hung between them, fragile but binding. The next afternoon, while Ethan repaired the shed outside, Sarah searched for extra quilts inside. She found a wooden chest and lifted the lid. Her breath left her body in a single broken exhale. Inside lay a woven blanket, deep indigo threaded with lightning-shaped streaks. The broken lightning line, her father's pattern. No 2 families wove it the same way, and this one carried the unmistakable signature of her bloodline. "Where did you get this?" Her voice was barely a whisper, brittle from the inside out. Ethan froze. 15 years ago, he began, his voice steady but hollow. "My truck went off the mountain road. Snowstorm hit fast. I was hanging half over a ravine. A man appeared. Lakota, strong build, long black hair, kind eyes. He wrapped me in that blanket, tried to pull me out. He got me free, but the ground beneath him gave way. The room felt painfully still. Sarah pressed a hand to her mouth. Time, location, the design of the blanket. There could be no mistake. It was her father. She gathered her baby and daughters and made for the door. Ethan followed her into the snow. "Sarah, please." She kept walking until the children stopped, too tired to move farther. Your father died saving me, Ethan said, his voice raw. I didn't tell anyone. I was afraid. Afraid of what I'd taken from you. I lived, and he didn't, and I've carried that every day. Do you know what it is to wait 15 years for someone who never came back? Sarah's voice wavered. Yes, Ethan replied. More than you know. Sarah looked at her children, then back at the cabin glowing through the snow. I'm not forgiving you. Not tonight. But the children need warmth and a roof and sleep. We go back. She stepped past him, leaving Ethan standing in the snow with his guilt laid bare. Days followed in quiet rhythm. Ethan split logs while Sarah taught her daughters old Lakota songs. He showed them how to stack kindling safely. She gathered dried sage, lighting it by the threshold, whispering prayers of gratitude. Something softened inside him watching her perform these acts rooted in heritage and strength. 7 days passed. Then engines came. A polished black truck rolled into the yard, followed by a county sheriff's vehicle. Towan stepped out, tall and broad-shouldered, his face spoiled by resentment. Behind him came Sheriff Cole Maddox, weathered and steady. Towan's lips twisted into a smirk when he spotted Sarah. My wife playing house with a soldier boy. Ethan moved between them, without a word. Ranger stood at his side, hackles raised but controlled. Inside, Maddox asked careful questions. The room answered before Sarah spoke. The way the children recoiled from Towan's voice. The bruising on Sarah's wrists. The fear flickering across her daughters' faces. When Sarah described her escape, Maddox listened without interruption. I'm opening a file for domestic abuse. He told Towan. You will appear in court tomorrow. This isn't over, Towan snarled, jabbing a finger toward the children. No, Sarah said quietly. We're not. The sheriff escorted him away, leaving behind ugly promises in the snow. The courtroom smelled of pine polish and old paper. Sarah stood tall and composed, her long black hair braided neatly. Judge Helen Rohr presided, her silver hair pinned in a bun, sharp blue eyes missing nothing. Sarah told the court about the early years, how hope for a son twisted into bitterness, how alcohol filled the cracks until anger became the language of their home. She described a night she ran into a storm that could kill them, because staying behind would kill them slower. Her voice didn't tremble. Sheriff Maddox testified to what he'd seen at the ranch, the way the children flinched at their father, Sarah's lingering bruises, the protective stance they took behind Ethan, the calm, structured safety the former SEAL had created. Judge Rohr delivered her ruling. The marriage is dissolved. Full custody is granted to the mother. A protective order is issued effective immediately. Mr. Towan, you are prohibited from approaching Ms. Wyaka or children within 300 yards. Sarah closed her eyes, not in triumph, just in relief so deep it hollowed her lungs. For the first time in years, she breathed air that felt like freedom. The ranch welcomed them back. Ethan built a new room onto the cabin, repaired the sagging roof, reinforced the fence line. Sarah planted wildflower seeds along the front porch, saying the earth deserved color after so much winter. The children's laughter stretched across the yard like sunlight. The cabin no longer felt like a waypoint. It felt like home. Spring crept into Montana like a shy visitor. Ethan loaded the truck for the long drive to the reservation. Sarah wore a long blue dress, her hair braided with a single white bead her mother had given her years ago. Waiting on the steps was her mother, Mary Ann Wyaka, silver-streaked hair braided tightly, eyes holding old sorrow and unbroken strength. When Sarah ran into her arms, Mary Ann held her with relief and heartbreak. Then she turned to Ethan. Inside the lodge, Ethan told her everything. The winter storm, the icy road, the Lakota man who came out of the white blur like a guardian. The moment the ground gave way beneath his feet, Mary Ann closed her eyes. A single tear slipped down her cheek. He returned to the earth protecting another life. That is a warrior's passing. He would not want blame where gratitude should be. She touched Ethan's arm. Tell me what you intend with my daughter. To stand beside her, he said. To give those children a safe home. To make sure none of them face another winter alone. That evening, the communal lodge filled with family and elders. Sarah wore a shawl embroidered with a new lightning pattern, symbolizing new beginnings. Ethan stepped forward, holding a small silver ring with a thin lightning line carved along its surface. If you'll allow me, I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you and the children never face another storm alone. Sarah's eyes glistened. She nodded. Mary Ann and Elder stepped forward carrying a star quilt, draping it over their shoulders, joining them beneath its warmth. A circle formed around them, hands linked. A soft chant rose, ancient and gentle, blessing their union. Ranger trotted around the circle, becoming the ceremony's four-legged witness. When they returned to the ranch, the land seemed brighter. The children ran with freedom that felt like music. Ethan stood beside Sarah on the porch as the sun dipped low. Her hand found his. "This land used to feel empty," he said quietly, "like my life was just ice and silence. And now," she asked, "now the winters don't feel so cold. Not with you beside me." Some people say miracles arrive with thunder or signs written across the sky. But sometimes a miracle looks like a weary soldier stopping on a frozen highway. Sometimes it looks like a mother who refuses to give up. And sometimes it looks like two broken lives finding each other at the exact moment they've carried enough pain. God places people in our path at the right time to remind us that no winter lasts forever. Redemption doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it walks toward you slowly, gently, like a hand reaching through the snow. And none of us are meant to walk this life alone.